Welcome back to the Extra Rep podcast. I'm Josh.
I'm Liam.
Today we're going to be going beyond the calorie deficit. So as we all know, you've heard it 1,000 times, you need a calorie deficit to lose fat. But we're going to talk about effective fat loss whilst preserving muscle mass. So really getting into your body composition. So we're going to be going into some misconceptions about fat loss. We're going to be talking about how to balance your actual deficit with your energy levels and things like that. We're obviously going to talk about the role of strength training as well. And we'll talk about recovery hormones a little bit. Liam's going to take a bigger section of the podcast there. We're going to talk about steps and why they're so important, why your activity levels are important. And then we're going to give you guys some quick wins at the end. So some quick strategies that you guys can apply to get the most out of it. So I guess, Liam, the first thing we want to talk about is more so misconceptions of fat loss. You know, what fat loss actually is and why, I guess, just eat less isn't the whole story.
Well, because we got to make sure that fat loss is fat loss and not weight loss and muscle loss.
So talk to them about that and what the difference is between weight loss and fat loss, because I think a lot of people get confused.
Yeah. So your weight fluctuates every single day. The time of the day, end of the night, whatever you eat, how much sodium you take, water retention, hormone fluctuation, you know, the type of food, like an inflammation response in the body, stress from work, whatever it may be. Like everything determines your weight at that point in time. And when you're actually weighing yourself either daily, it needs to be at the same time every single day and preferably fasted in the morning because there's no other variables throughout the day that are going to mess with that. And we need to make sure either through nutrition, visual photos, measurements, that it's coming off the right places that we want. So majority of people will want it coming off, say, like the neck, the stomach, the face, but face you can't really measure, but visually you will see it.
I think one thing to mention there is you can't actually, this will sort of go into the first misconception and myth, is that you can't actually spot reduce, you know, body fat really. It's obviously in terms of training, you know, you can probably manipulate things to potentially get some more volume through there, which might build you some more muscle and drop you some more body fat around that area. But you'll find, especially for, I know, like women, like around their hips, and blokes probably around the stomach area, they seem to be the two, I guess, key problem areas.
Or love handles.
Yeah, love handles, exactly
love handles
right.
are the biggest one.
And then that sort of leads into a point where, you know, people might lose a bit of fat, but then it's not coming off the areas they want. And that's when they sort of go, oh, it's not working. They give up, you know.
But then in my role, when I look a little bit deeper, I actually look at a lot of inflammation responses and cortisol responses to water retention. So people could be losing a shit ton of weight, but they have like what's called a moon face. And they're like, I'm not losing any water on my face. It's like, okay, you might be chronically inflamed. You might have something else going on there. The biggest one I see with water retention in the face is high cortisol or insulin resistance. So they're borderline almost diabetic.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So in terms of, I guess, like, let's talk about a few different dietary approaches and why, you know, they're not going to be the be all end all. Obviously, when we talk about principles and methods. So when we talk about, you know, fat loss going beyond the calorie deficit, the principle we know is the calorie deficit, but the method in which we use to get there, they're your sort of fad diets that everyone talks about, you know, and again, some work, some don't, but they all will work because of the principle.
Let's throw one out straight away, and I see this more than maybe you see it, but the quality of your food matters.
Yeah.
Like nutrient absorption and like your digestive health, not that we're going to make it a podcast about that, but I've had literally clients eating 1,500 calories a day and not the best source of stuff, and they're wondering why they can't lose weight, or their body composition is not changing, or their sleep goes to shit, or just a whole bunch of things. It's like 1,500 calories of like meat, veg, honey, you know, coffee, all the other good stuff, compared to like 1,500 calories of like, oh, I just fasted all day and had one meal, and it was a 1,500 calorie just Taco Bell meal.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to, you know, even, you know, going into keto, fasting, you know, all those sort of different types of, you know, diets you can do. They're all probably going to have their pros and cons. And there's a method that we sort of both like doing in terms of obviously tracking calories, but doing it a certain way, which we'll talk about in a second. But you'll find, like I said, there's going to be pros and cons to these sort of things. And if you don't understand the pros and cons, it's going to make it really hard to, you know, when a con happens, you think, oh, but that's okay, because you try and just outweigh it with the pros. And that's where you get that, I guess, that confirmation bias.
Yeah.
It's like, say, someone, you know, going to like an F45 and like smacking themselves 6 days a week and then being like, oh, but I lost weight. and then all of a sudden it stops because they're, probably chronically inflamed, they're under recovered, they're smashing themselves with like 6, 7, 10 hit sessions a week, and then wondering why they've stopped. But they think like, if I go away from that, like, no, that's what got me initial fat loss in the first place. So maybe talk to us a bit more about that, because I'm sure you've had clients in that position and how you've sort of fixed that or reframed their mindset around that.
Well, usually I go back to the quality of the food, but really I frame it as a lifestyle. And I cannot stress that enough. Like any health and fitness change, like, even the term diet, it's like the second you go on a diet, that means at some point you're going to be off the diet. Yeah. Like you're not going to diet for the rest of your life. So as cliche as it is, and it's probably the answer people don't want to hear, it's like you are changing your lifestyle. You're making lifestyle habit changes better for you. And the longer you stick to it, the easier it gets. It's like you make a change. Let's say, intermittent fasting because you're on a certain roster and you can't really eat in the morning, or you like to skip dinner or whatever it may be. It's like, it might not work for some people. It could be amazing for that person's roster. Like I had heaps of like miners and stuff in Perth and Queensland and on FIFO and stuff. And they're just like, I just don't want to sit and eat the shit in the cafe that they had. They're like, I'll just have a black coffee and keep going and have my own meals. And it really worked well for them.
Yeah, it makes it simple, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that leads us into, how to actually balance your calorie deficit, because obviously depending on the person, if you have a person who's 150 kilos and a person who's 80 kilos, both wanting to lose fat, there's obviously going to be a massive difference there between, what deficit you'd put them in. So,
well, activity level comes into play as well. Like what you do throughout the day in terms of, do you work a sedentary job? Are you sitting down? Are you working a very active job? Are you a builder? Like, even a school teacher will do yard duty and just walk for an hour. Like they get heaps of steps in. And then they're standing up in class teaching all day. It's like people don't realize there's little things that really do impact fat loss overall. Yeah,
I think that's underutilized as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about steps later. But just going back to that deficit, I think in terms of, these are really general rules, but let's say someone wants to lose a kilo a week. We know roughly 1 kilo of fat is about 7,700 calories. So probably let's say between 7,500 and 8,000, because there's going to be bodily hormonal processes, etc. Exactly, depending on a lot of things, depending on, you're going deeper into blood work and things like that. But as a general rule...
well, even women.
Yeah, like, much different as well.
You've probably noticed this through your coaching, but I've certainly noticed it through mine. Coming up to their period for that 1 week, it's like I put them in a deficit for like 3 weeks. Coming up to that menstrual cycle, we actually start to add things in like dark chocolate and stuff like that will, yes, it has a histamine response in the body when all the hormones are going on, but when they have those like intense cravings, it relieves that. You give them like an extra 200 calories a day coming from chocolate, or, some girls even drink wine, but still that can still keep them on track for the rest of the 3 weeks and not do any damage.
Yeah, I think that's a good podcast topic in itself. We'll definitely dive into sort of, that menstrual cycle and women's health in one of them for sure.
Yeah.
But even back to that deficit, it's that sort of same thing of, you just want to pick how aggressive you want to be. And again, this client's starting point is going to be very different. So like I said, someone who's 150 kilos and really metabolically unhealthy, for me personally, I just want to get the fat off them as quick as possible, like in that first initial stage, because any fat loss is probably going to be more beneficial than, not saying you can't optimize obviously the food they're eating and things like that. But if it's
100%.
The choice between them having one cheat day a week and still losing a kilo, I'll take that every day of the week over, someone who's obviously 80 kilos looking to lose 5 kilos, for example. Big difference between, we obviously probably going to have the deficit more sustainable. So let's say someone, again, the time frames are probably going to be much different. If you're 150 kilos, you can probably lose 2 to 3 kilos a week comfortably and feel pretty good about it.
I actually have, and shout out to you, Raymond, if you're going to be watching this. I have a client now, Raymond, who was over 150 kilos when he started with me. He works 90 hours a week truck driving in Port Macquarie, and he is getting it done. He still shows up to the gym. He's getting fuck all sleep, like 3 hours, and we're tracking his sleep. He's getting 0 REM, all that stuff.
Yeah, right.
But he's still getting it done. He's still tracking his calories, and he's under 140 now. This is in about 8 weeks.
Yeah, lovely.
So yes, he could have had it faster if, other lifestyle things were in proportion there, but he's still making it work.
Yeah.
And that's important.
Yeah, I think that is an important thing. People don't realise things are never going to be optimal. That's the
Never.
thing where people go like,
Never.
oh, I'll just wait till school finishes and
Yeah.
then I'll lose the weight. I'll wait till
Yeah.
I have another kid or this happens
Yeah.
or I go on holiday. You know, there's never going to be an optimal time. And if you don't start with your health now, especially depending on obviously where you're at, but you can always improve it no matter.
This is something I hammer home to my clients. It's like us humans as mental beings, we have a superpower of like, we can just make the decision to be like, okay, cool, I'm done with the alcohol. I'm done with this shit person. I'm done with this job, done with whatever, done with this diet or done with feeling like crap. And I can just make the change now.
Yeah.
And they can just do little things to start. But as long as they start and build momentum, that's all that matters. I mean, if you've got a coach, it's a lot easier because they do a lot of the work for you. You literally become a robot. You ask the question. We give you the plan. We're like, just follow this. You'll get exactly this result in this week. Never behold, they do it. Holy shit, I feel a lot better. All X, Y, and Z's down. I lost this amount of fat. And also it just builds that realization. People are afraid to start looking at the analytics. So when you get your clients to say weigh in daily or check in daily with
Track your food,
tracking your food or water intake or
It's confronting, isn't it?
sleep, and it's just like, I thought I slept well, but I looked at the stats and oh fuck, I don't sleep very well. It's like, okay, well, what do you do before bed? Oh, I'll scroll TikTok, all this stuff. But it's like people don't realize, and this is why we're saying beyond the calorie deficit, if you want fat loss, you need to sleep.
Yeah.
Like
I think that leads us into, you know,
Yes.
stress, recovery and hormones, those sort of things.
Yes.
Sleep and stress are going to be, you know, your two main things.
Well, being in a deficit is stress enough. Like the body loves homeostasis. Like the body, the mind's like, it does not want you to change.
Yeah.
Even if you're suffering and unhealthy, it doesn't want you to change. It likes being always at a set point. So the second you do things to change that, it'll resist, fight back, whether it be hormones, energy crashes, cravings, whatever it may be.
And that's why I think it's so important. Like I said, when we go back to, you know, nutrition, the quality of your food plays just such a massive factor in
biggest
energy levels,
role.
in exactly
The
right.
biggest role.
So it's like if you can sleep well, stress less, and eat a good quality diet, and we'll obviously get into weight training in a second as well. But if you can do those four, I guess, main things, that's going to get you 90% of the way there at least.
Well, the micronutrients in certain vitamins, like if people are worried about, as you mentioned before, like spot reduction of fat or like loose skin when they're losing weight or stuff like that. If you have a shit ton of vitamin C, which is in micronutrients like veggies, or things like bone broth, which upregulates collagen synthesis, your skin will naturally tighten as you lose weight. And you'll actually visually look different.
It is funny, isn't it? How like just little things like that will add up over time.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to the podcast, you know, the extra rep, we're giving you those extra 1%ers, you know, just beyond all this stuff to get you to that next level. Like there's going to be little hacks you'll find, there's little things that you'll be able to do. But if you want to talk to me just a bit about, I guess, like cortisol and stress and how that plays a really big role in the body, especially when it comes to like optimizing your body composition and fat loss.
Well, it plays in the role of sleep as well, because if you don't get a good sleep, your hormones shit themselves. Like you can almost be diabetic just like from a hormonal perspective, just from getting a really bad night of sleep.
Yeah.
Then stress is obviously elevated because naturally in the morning our cortisol levels spike. But if you didn't get a good night's sleep and you didn't also get that deep restorative sleep to refresh your brain from all the stresses of the day before, then that spikes. Then there's these two specific hormones. They're called ghrelin and leptin. One's your hunger hormone, one's your satiation hormone. So if you get a shit night's sleep, ghrelin goes up, your hunger and your cravings, and leptin goes down. So whatever you have will be less satiating, you'll be less satisfied. This is why people, when they're hungover, they get cravings for really shit food. And there's an actual mechanism for it. It's just hormonal.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I think that goes, just tying back into that sleep and how actually important it is. Like there was a study done, I'll find it for you guys and link it in the comments for you, but it was basically people sleeping 8 hours and 5 hours. Protein was the same, calories were the same, training was the same.
Yeah, different responses there.
Exactly, So they did the 8 weeks. They both lost similar numbers of weight on the scale, but when they actually did the body composition analysis, the people who slept 5 hours gained muscle and dropped a lot of body fat, whereas in the people who were 5 hour group actually lost muscle and gained a bit of body fat, which I find crazy because you'd think if you're looking at just the scale, you'd be like, oh, things are trending in the right direction. I'm sticking with my calories. I'm doing all the right things. But again, this is why it's so important. If you're not managing, like I said, your stress and your sleep, you're not going to optimize your fat loss at all. And it, could even very well go backwards.
Yeah. I don't know when it became such like a popular thing to avoid sleep. Like, I don't know if it's the hustle culture or people working jobs they hate and the only time they enjoy is when they get home and they just will watch another Netflix episode, then the next one, then the next one, and keep going. I actually used to be like that as a teenager. Like, my only source of happiness was trying to stay up as late as possible playing Call of Duty.
2 a.m., 4 a.m., 6
Exactly.
a.m., yeah. Can I stay up all night?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It used to be a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Now I'm just like, what a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Why would I do that?
Yeah, now we train, do all the right things.
Exactly.
But I think that leads us, into the role of strength training and why it's so important. And specifically, we want to talk
Specifically
more
on a
about
deficit?
exactly
Yeah.
in a deficit because, again, there is a stress on the body. Strength training, like it's fantastic. We want to strength train. We want to train in the gym. But exactly, there's going to be a stress still placed on the body. Your body doesn't know where stress is coming from. So you've got internal and external stress. Obviously, internal stress will be, placed on the body from like training, running, all that sort of thing. And then obviously if you've got your external, money, life, family, girlfriend, etc., etc. So they're interesting things where the body won't know the difference. And if you tip that, I imagine like a water bucket analogy, if you put too much internal and external, then exactly it's going to start overflowing. So if the bucket starts overflowing, we're going to be into a recovery deficit, and then it's very, very difficult to get back out without knowing what to do. So I guess if you want to talk a bit more about strength training and specifically, why it's probably not ideal to do like HIIT style training and why probably a lower volume approach is the way to go when talking about a deficit.
I was going to ask you about that because I know we program differently and I go from more of a lower volume, more frequency type of approach. How do you sort of like program on a fat loss phase for certain clients? Because I know we'd probably do similar, but we have different programming.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Obviously, if someone's never been in the gym before, I do like actually doing more sets and more frequency because, of course, they're brand new to the gym. They're not going to actually be pushing themselves to failure, and they're basically just going to get like their nervous system's just going to get better at doing the exercise. So it's basically about practice when you first start those first sort of, let's say, 6 to 12 weeks.
It's the golden period when you've first started training. And you are going to get results regardless. You can do the worst training and have the worst diet, but if you train consistently for 12 weeks... Yeah,
and have just a little bit of protein.
Just a little bit of protein and
you'll
sleep,
make some changes.
Like, you'll still make some body composition changes.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of people go wrong because they'll do the first 3 months in the gym, like the bros will come in, just think, I just slam a shake after my workout. And they go, oh, sweet, I've slammed a shake, obviously got the protein in there. That's obviously going to help, but there is going to get to a point where all of a sudden things start slowing down because, maybe they're not tracking their weights, they're not optimizing things, and they just wonder what's going on.
Just what you mentioned there about tracking weights. When you are on a deficit, if you've been tracking your weights and starting your deficit, your program, what weights you've hit previously, that is a huge benchmark for the strength training in the future because even though you're on a deficit, you should not be seeing strength loss.
Yeah, 100%.
You should be able to see, and if not still in some cases, I mean, I've done on a deficit, you've done on a deficit, still being able to push further. Yeah. And that will just have as less muscle loss as possible. Yeah.
And I think it's important to note that comes back to tying nutrition in. So specifically around carbs, which we'll sort of talk about now, is like optimizing your carbs around your training is really, especially in a deficit, is really going to give you a massive boost. So we obviously know carbs are your body's primary fuel source, primary energy source. They get broken down into glucose, and that is what's going to fuel your training sessions when you're doing those hard and intense sets. So if we can fuel yourself a couple of hours beforehand with that, potentially if you've got more carbs, can even use them during the session and obviously after to help replenish your muscle glycogen stores. That, they're little 5%ers, but if that means you either maintain or get stronger, that's going to be the difference every week between you potentially losing muscle mass, maintaining it, or even gaining some as you're losing body fat at the same time.
Well, it's probably worth mentioning that study that I showed you last week about people in the deficit and they're a little bit sleep deprived and they wake up and train straight away, fasted. Yeah. You can make these small little tweaks of things like raw organic honey or a banana or some coffee, some creatine, and it can just offset all those things. And exactly what you just mentioned there about the quick glucose to fuel the muscle and everything. They're like literally 80 to 100 calories. They'll digest straight away and you'll be able to push that a little bit further in the gym because if you're sleep deprived and in a deficit a little bit, you will still feel tired. Sometimes you can't deny it. Like on a deficit, sometimes you're just going to feel lethargic. You're going to feel tired. And what you mentioned there about carbs, because it is our natural primary fuel source, a lot of the guys that I deal with, if they do have autoimmune conditions, carbs isn't their best friend, even though we know it's so good around a training response. So if we can just keep carbs to like before and after training, like in just real simple carbs, it could be just rice, it could be blueberries, just something that's low GI and just not going to spike things like crazy.
Easily digestible
easy
as well.
Digestible. I mean, look, some rices probably aren't low GI. Some of them probably higher on the glycemic index. But you know, if you do have like say honey on those things, it actually lowers the glycemic index when you consume it. It's been shown to improve in diabetics and assisting the liver in breaking down glucose. So having said that, if you can keep your carbs around training, even though, because a lot of people notice like, oh, I eat carbs and I just feel tired. Like and it's like, well, yeah, you ate a sandwich and you're sitting at the office for the next 6 hours. It's like, yeah, you're not moving around.
Yeah. So fueling your movement.
Exactly.
It goes back to, you know, steps, and we'll go into that a bit now, but it's like the more you move, the more you want to move. The more you want to be lazy and sit on the couch, the more you're going to feel like you don't want to get up and move.
Well, I can give everyone a hack for fat loss and nutrient partitioning and metabolic health. Whatever you eat, take a 10-minute walk after. Yeah. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Makes such a big difference.
Anytime you eat some form of food, and you know, that doesn't include snacking because you shouldn't snack. I can get onto that in a different rant. You should be having meals, not snacking, because snacking is a recipe for disaster in a lot of people. That's where the self-control just goes out of the window. Yeah. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think very just structuring your meals as well from that, like, you know, satiety and satiety process mainly, because it's like if your body knows roughly what time it eats, it helps to regulate that further. Yeah. Obviously, when you're in a deficit, there's gonna, like you said, get to a point where you go, you know, I'm gonna be tired or I'm gonna be hungry no matter what. Yeah. But if we can offset that for as long as possible, while someone's losing weight, you know, still building muscle or at the very least maintaining it, you know, it will get hard. And again, that gets to the point where people give up, which is, you know, probably a different conversation around willpower and what's going on there. But yeah, it goes back to just if you can fuel yourself, you can do all the right things, and you can make sure that you can maintain that sort of balance between hunger, satiety, which obviously goes back to sleep, which goes back to stress, which we'll now sort of talk a bit more in sort of weight training. Yeah. So with weight training, like what would you prescribe? Like, let's just say the average bloke wants to lose a bit of fat. Like, how often should he come in and train in the gym? What should he be focusing on? What should he be doing?
I would say, well, this is how I'd program from all the literature, and you know, just saying like I might change my mind down the future. You've probably changed your mind on many things. Sure. I've been programming for 10 years and I feel like the last year I've only cracked the code. Yeah. Like literally, like there's so much information out there. I would actually give them a 3 times full body training session. So like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, making sure they're getting a day of recovery in between. If they feel like they're recovering really well from that, then what I would do is in the middle of those days, I'd give them some short intensity cardio. So like nothing above 140 beats per minute. Make sure they're only breathing through their nose. It can be the Stairmaster, it can be the elliptical, it can be the bike, whatever it may be. Or just prescribe more steps and walking throughout the day. Now, in terms of that strength training on those 3 times full body days, I don't go for junk volume. I go for specific targeted working sets of about 2 working sets between 5 to 7 reps. And I make sure they warm up for about 2 sets of about 12 to 8 reps around there, just to make sure that the body and the nervous system is primed and ready to go for that working set. I still want my guys pushing numbers every single week. Yeah.
And I think that's what it comes back down to. Like if you're, like I said, getting weaker in the gym, I'd much rather the same, especially in a deficit. A lower volume approach is always going to be better because you'd rather be like only doing 2 sets and pushing them and progressing because at least you know then, okay, I'm still making progression and I'm still feeling okay. Whereas if you're just going to bang it up to 4, 5, 6, 7 sets, which, you know, again, you don't need, but some people are smashing, you know, 8x8, like the Geronda program and stuff like that. And again, these things go back to, you know, how you do the programming and how many reps you leave in reserve. But again, if you can come in, if you can just pick, you know, like a full body, you pick an exercise for each muscle group, say 6 or 7 exercises. Yep. You can push 1 or 2 sets, very close to failure, if not on failure, and you can beat those the next week. Yep. That is the most simplified version of how to maintain and build muscle whilst you're obviously losing in a calorie deficit, I think.
Also, like the metrics for recovery on a deficit are so easy to pinpoint. It's like, are you sore every single day after your training session? Do you feel like you can go into the next session recovered? It's like, you can or you can't. You'll know if you're sore or you're not, or if you're far too tired. So they're just easy metrics to track on that sense. Then it's like, okay, is it the training too much volume? Is it the nutrition? Is it the sleep? This is why you and I, with our clients, we track literally everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Although I'm speaking for myself. I don't know how much you track.
I think that comes back to the client as well, which is quite interesting. Like for example, someone comes in, they don't know what they're doing. I'm not going to be like, get your HRV and, I want you to document every single little thing. I want the big rocks, okay, what are you doing with your nutrition? For example, my clients will do a food journal the first week normally.
Yep.
I'll be like, don't worry about calories now, just show me what you're eating. I'll be like, because if there's things I can just change and make easy swaps.
Yep.
Straight away that's going to get them result without having to worry about, do I have to track every single calorie? And of course we get to that. And optimizing your food choices. But if we can just optimize food choices straight away, where I know I can knock out 200 calories here by swapping this, 300 calories here by swapping that, changing XYZ, moving XYZ, it just makes it really easy to get that quick win, where they start losing straight away.
I can guarantee to the listeners, if they've never tracked calories, yes, we understand it's a pain in the ass for the first 1 to 2 months, but then you realize how much you've actually learnt and you know things intuitively. Sometimes you built a skill that you don't really ever need to track. It's only the shock value at first of being I go out for, a breakfast every single weekend, and then you track it and you add everything in, you're like, that's 1,200 calories in breakfast.
Yeah.
And you're just like, yep. And that's just guessing, because you don't know what butter that was cooked in or whatever, the stuff like that. You're just talking about the hash browns, the bacon, the eggs. They're like, oh, I thought it was protein and carbs. I thought it was good for me. It's like, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that actually, it pisses me off when people go, calories are a law of thermodynamics. And if that's obviously going to change a bit with sleep stress and what's going on, but you can't...
And gut health.
And gut health. But it's you can't dispute the role of calories. It's just because you think you're in a deficit doesn't mean you are. It's you're probably tracking inaccurately. You're probably doing other things. And yes, it is annoying at first, but it's when you first set up your bank account, it's and you go to create a budget. Yeah, of course it's annoying. You have to go through all your subscriptions, all that crap, and be like, it takes hours.
It's confronting as
well.
and
it's confronting. You go, I'm spending that much money. It's the same thing of I'm eating that much food.
Any form of data for someone to get when they know they need to make a change will be confronting. Whether it's they need to get blood work from me, they're like, oh shit. Some people sign up and it's just I kind of knew I had to do this, but I'm like, oh shit, I actually have to go to the GP and get a needle in me and try and get these results. It's this is actually very important, man. This can save you years on your life down the track if we know what's going on now and make the change. But it's the same thing with the calories. If you thought you were doing everything perfectly, but you're stepping on the scale every morning and you're not seeing a change, but turns out you didn't realize that the latte was 300 calories when you could have just had a long black, which is 0 calories, or you could have just swapped this drink from a Coke to a Diet Coke, and it's you go from 200 calories or 40 grams of sugar to 0 calories.
Yeah. And that makes it's funny actually. I've got a client literally came in, online client, his name is Griffin, so shout out if you're watching. He was tracking, doing everything correctly, and I was like, let's look a bit deeper here. And we found out he was having those two mocha choco or whatever latte things from Starbucks, and it ended up being nearly 1,000 calories a day. And all I said, literally, my job was to tell him just cut them out. Obviously, we optimized some stuff as well, and we gave him a training program, but that was the main thing. And he dropped 12 kilos in 10 weeks.
Yeah, shit.
So it's just something so simple. He's like, I just didn't know that. Swapped it for short blacks, had 3 short blacks instead throughout the day. No problem. Make sure obviously it didn't interfere too much with his sleep. And again, we'll do another episode on, I guess the pros and cons of caffeine, because I think that'll be a really good one to go into as well.
Do you want to be the con man for that one?
Yeah, that'd be great.
And I've got so many pros.
Yeah, 100%. I think it'll be good to have an open discussion about it, and if one of us takes the pro and con.
Coffee was demonized for so long, and to see so much research being put out there of how beneficial it is, and especially if you're in a deficit and you love coffee. And you can, I've seen studies that the health benefits show you can smash 4 cups a day.
Yeah.
You can smash 4 coffees in the morning between the hours of 7 a.m. to 12 p.m.
Yeah.
And you've essentially fasted, but coffee's a natural appetite suppressant. It's giving you energy. And you're like, wait, this dieting is so simple. I get to drink coffee and I don't have to eat until 12. Little strategies like that can make a huge difference.
But then it's funny, it's like I said, but the con side is if you have it too close to sleep, it's going to fuck your sleep.
Yeah.
So
hence why I listed 7 to 12 p.m.
Exactly,
Because
yeah.
look, caffeine is a different metabolite in certain people. It does come down to genetics. You know, there are the old wogs out there with these amazing receptors that can drink 4 espressos after their dinner and go to bed at 11 and sleep like a baby.
It's crazy.
And then there's some people that touch it at like 11 a.m. and they're still wide when they
Wide
go to bed.
awake,
Like,
yeah.
you know, everyone's different.
Yeah, and that's what's, again, I think that's what it comes back to, is that obviously we're trying to optimize a calorie deficit, but that's going to be different for every single person who's listening.
Yeah.
You know, there's going to be, different blood works, going to be different strategies, you're going to have different jobs. So I guess tying this all together, like what are some easy strategies? I guess they're going to be a bit more general.
Yeah.
What are some general strategies we can give to people who are looking at the moment to like get in a calorie deficit, but obviously optimize their body composition at the same time?
Well, I hate to always go back to this, but it's literally just make sure it tailors you and your lifestyle. They need to know that first and foremost, because it's so easy with this social media day and age to look at what everyone's doing and be like, I'm going to try that, I'm going to try that, I'm going to try that. But it's like, break down your lifestyle, your times, like your commitments, what you have to do during a day, when you can get your training and all that stuff. Get that done first. And I would say hire a coach because they take care of everything for you. But a lot of people, don't want to go down that route. So if they're just taking it from themselves, I'll be like, okay, get 2 weeks worth of data first. So get 2 weeks of, say, a food journal, your daily weight, and then see the pattern and the correlation of what's going on.
Yep.
Once they get that, they know if, okay, so I ate however many calories this day, and I actually ate that Monday to Friday, and I use that as an example because humans usually Monday to Friday are just so easy at just keeping the routine, and then the weekends it goes out of track.
Yeah.
They will see if things change on the weekend and if it affects throughout the next week.
Yeah.
So as long as we get that data, then you can make the changes. But I would start saying, honestly, just pay attention to everything. I go from a more intuitive approach, like notice how much water you're drinking throughout the day. Hydration is a big one, especially when it comes to hunger on a fat loss phase. A lot of people mindlessly eat. You've probably seen this. Like they associate eating with either boredom or a habit. It's like, okay, well,
This time,
time,
I'm sitting in front of the TV.
I always get the chips out because my favorite TV show is on, and I finished work and it's been a hard day and it's 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
And they've eaten a whole bag of air. I'm eating chips, but that's just the joke. It's a bag of air. I'm not a fan of chips, if you can't tell.
I love chips.
I think
salt and vinegar crinkle cut.
It's just
the best.
It's a pointless calorie to eat. There's so many better options. But having said that, they just need to make sure that. Fuck, I lost my train of thought.
That's right. I can sort of just chime in
Bring
with.
me back. Because I went on the tangent there.
Pretty much optimizing your fat loss. So what are some strategies they can use? So obviously after they've got the first 2 weeks of data, what can they do there?
No, back to the mindless eating. Be intuitive with how the foods you eat make you feel. Because that will determine how easy the diet will be to stick to. If you're eating things that make you feel like shit or make you hungrier after or make you tired and lethargic, you probably may need to remove it. But honestly, I would say make sure you get a good night's sleep. That's probably number one for me, because that'll, for any diet to succeed, you need adherence. And if you can just get enough rest where your brain's performing the next day, your willpower's a lot stronger, you're fully rested. Sleep always becomes king for me. I would say make sure you plan ahead when it comes to if you have social outings. A lot of the times people go in XYZ wherever on the weekend. It's like every place has an online menu.
Yeah.
Just look it up beforehand and plan accordingly.
Pick the option best,
Yeah, because there's so many times where you go to a place you haven't been to before and you just panic. You're like, oh shit, what do I get? This look healthier, this look healthier. And you just don't want that. You want to eliminate all factors. Make sure you're still training in the gym, making sure you're moving throughout the day. And that's just general movement throughout the day. Like you don't have to track your steps, even though it's a metric that helps. It's like you just want to make sure that you're moving. Like we are not designed to sit down all day.
Yeah.
We really aren't. I don't know why a lot of people in modern society do. It's like we're designed to be moving a lot.
Which is obviously hard for people, but I think, like I said, it goes down to, going back to those big rocks. It's like, okay, like I normally get my clients, if there's 5 sort of main things we'll track. I normally get them to, put it on a whiteboard or put it on the fridge. I go, okay, calories, can you hit your calorie total? Protein, can you hit a total of protein? Sleep, can you hit 8 hours of sleep or, between 7 and 9 hours? Steps, can you hit steps? And then training, can you train at least 3 times a week weights? If you can do any other sort of cardio, like you said, raising that heart rate a little bit twice a week, cardiovascularly, we'll obviously do a separate podcast on that as well.
As long as they recover from it.
Exactly right. And like I said, when it goes into that HIIT stuff,
recovery and sustainability.
Yeah.
Like, as I said before, adherence is key. The second you start to burn the candle on both ends, you know, the closer your body has to being like, I'm out, I'm done.
yeah. And I think that's a good final thought, is that people always want more. They want to go, okay, I'm on a deficit, but I want to lose more. So I'm like, I'm going to add another weight training session. I'm going to add this. I'm going to boost another 10,000 steps. I'm going to do X, Y, Z, which will work for a certain period of time. But I think there needs to be a strategic plan in place. Like I said, we have a coach to be like, okay, we've had a plateau. Now it's time to, decrease calories or increase steps or really focus on your sleep.
I think that's why it's so important to have a coach, because if you have a coach that's knowledgeable, you can go through a fat loss sprint and then we can get you out of it with no damage. Well, not no damage. I would say I could do no damage with some people, but like as less damage as possible, and then bring you back up into a point where your metabolism is actually eating a lot more calories and you're a lot healthier. But if you do it by yourself, there's just so many guessing factors and just, once again, adherence. Like, people just go through like a whole day of just really on point, and they get to Saturday and they just binge and destroy themselves.
Yeah. No routine.
No
different
routine.
day. Yeah.
But like it could be so many other things. Like everything else comes into play in fat loss. Like even mental health. It's like if someone's stuck to their diet but they're super miserable in their job Monday to Friday, and then the weekend's the only form of pleasure that they get, and that pleasure is ordering a pizza by themselves.
It's very easy to spiral into that.
It's so easy to spiral.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like a final dig, I can't help myself. Like some coaches, like I just want to give people a bit of a warning, because it's very easy for every fat loss coach under the sun online to be like, come here, we'll give you a program, we'll do this, we'll do that. They're probably going to pop you on 1,200 calories. They're not going to, even suss your blood work or, how are you going in the gym or anything like that. You'll probably get a generic program, a 1,200 calorie diet. Yeah. And if you don't work or you have any questions, it's, you just didn't want it hard enough. You needed to work harder. So you need to work hard. Of course, you're going to be hungry at times, but you need to work smart. And I think that's the key takeaway that they need to take away from this as well.
The easiest thing I could just rebuttal with that for the client's feedback or the person who's got a coach, if you feel like a number, get rid of your coach.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. If you don't feel like the coach generally has your best interest at heart, or just wants money, or just you feel like it's a hassle to get hold of him, sack him.
Yeah, you should be able to respond within 24 hours. If you can't respond to someone in 24 hours, I think there's issues. Yeah. But I think that covers it. Again, thanks so much, guys, for listening out. Again, we've gone through beyond the calorie deficit. There should be plenty of value in there to get the most out of obviously optimizing your body composition. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share. And if you have any questions for myself and Liam, all our links are going to be below. We're going to talk about a lot more coming into the future podcasts, a lot more guests, a lot more features. So looking forward to you guys keep listening, and we will see you in the next episode.
Thanks, guys.